all the participants there. I think there are more than 50 participants are there. So we'll have two sessions today on life skills. So in between some of the activities would be there. So please cooperate with me. So we'll be talking about what you call life skills issues in various domains, whether it could be classroom or whether it could be on a personal level or it could be at interpersonal level. So today we might cover three of the aspects because again on 3rd of Jan, again we'll have to cover emotional and self-awareness skills, which is something more important, also called as anger management skills and all, which we are going to deal with. But that's not today. It will be on 3rd of January for your kind information. So we'll be starting today with the, what you call various types of skills where how we can adopt in our day-to-day life, including our classroom situation. So three of the major aspects we are going to cover today is basically one is communication. What is communication? Then what is problem solving, as well as critical thinking. Why we require a critical thinking skill? Because now the technologies advance so much so that even the students are very smart to what you call grasp us, and they sometimes they read much before us, and sometimes they do more research than us before they come to class. So we have to have really what you call careful about these things, and we have to develop all these soft skills. That's the idea behind the entire workshop. So we start by one. So roughly, if we speak about, are you seeing the slide is moving?
Sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay,
Yes,
okay.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So
Yes, sir.
WHO has listed more than 10 skills, but on priority, these are the skills which it highlights, starting with the problem solving, creative thinking, self-awareness, interpersonal relationship, management of stress, decision making, critical thinking, empathy, good communication, and management of emotions, where I'm going to cover 3 to 4 aspects in our 4 sessions. So that's the idea. So one by one, we'll start. A few of the important things, if you already seen the 10 thing, so we directly start with the communication skills, why it is important for a teacher. Now remember, communication skills, a good teacher without a good communication skills, he cannot reach out his students, because what happens sometimes if we don't develop a good communication skill, the oratory skills, especially inside the class, if we don't develop, so even if we have so much of knowledge within us, if we are not disseminating properly for the students through proper communication skills, then whatever the knowledge you have, you're not able to properly disseminate or effectively disseminate them, provided the idea here is unless you have got a good communication skills. Now how we are going to what you call do these things? So that's why we require communication skills. Later we are going to check what is communication and all. So when you talk about communication skill, so how we are going to express ourselves to the other person using what you call various forms of communication techniques. So what are those communication types we'll be discussing again. So how good we are in expressing our what you call communicative ability, so that the audience or the person who is receiving the communication is well understood rather than misunderstood. That's the idea. So that you'll be having high clarity in your communication. Now today what we are having a problem is, sometimes being teachers, if we don't use effective communication skills, we may not have a good what do you call we may not have a successful career. Why? Because the moment if you are not having a good communication skills, you will be branded or labeled in a very different way, which is not a good idea at all being a teacher. And if there is no proper communication, it can have problem at a personal level, and and at and at even interpersonal level. So that's the idea why communication skills are important. Now remember, when you talk about this one, I think some Shankar DP, I think, can you mute your this one, Shankar DP? Yeah. Okay, now what is why we require communication, and what are the goals of communication? So when you talk about the goals of communication, please remember the first goal itself is to change behavior. Because of your communication styles, the students will try to adjust to your style because you have communicated in such a way that what is being expected from them. Now, as a teacher, being a teacher too, what I expect you to communicate very clearly with the students, like you expect a change in the behavior. It could be punctuality, it could be way of addressing, it could be way of what you call answering in the class, it could be even many things inside the class. So the idea here is the first thing itself is to change behavior. It could be at personal level with your children or with their siblings, yes, or with their parents. Now the idea here is when you talk about the change behavior, as a teacher, I would expect the other teachers too who are listening to me. All the time we expect, we clearly communicate what is we expect from the students. But how many of us really communicate to the students what is their expectation from teachers? So please do this exercise when the next semester opens, because usually we expect that we want students like this, we want students like this, we communicate. But can we have a change in our behavior based on the students' expectation? Because that's where I think you are reaching the students in a better way. So the two-way process where what is expected from your side and what is expected from the what you call student side, when both the things matches, I think the things will be fine. So that's the idea where the first idea itself is to change the behavior. The second aspect is to get action. So that's why without communication, no action will be done unless you instruct, unless you ask something to do or something to get. So without communication, the action will not be completed. So definitely, communication helps us in getting the required action to be performed. Then to ensure understanding, that's also more important. The moment we say ensure understanding is, this is where few of the teachers have failed, because how many of us have really understood that our students have understood what we are teaching? So this is where the ensuring understanding comes. That's one of the biggest goal of communication. If there is no understanding, as I said in the beginning only, there could be misunderstanding. That's a problem. So that is why, again, I request you to teachers, at the end of your class hour, you have communicated enough. Can you ask one more question? Did you understand? Do you want me to repeat again? So this is where you can make proper clarity in your what you call thought or your content to be what you call uh, disseminated clearly for the students. Then to pursue it, this is a very common thing where we repeatedly tell few things to pursue it so that it will be fixed. So communication is so important. And how many times we are told our own children, study, study, study. So that itself is, or don't use mobile, don't use mobile, don't use mobile. We keep on persuading them so that it will be having a clear cut impression. The same thing can happen inside the class too. And the another goal of communication is to get and give information, which is more important. It is not just giving information, it is even getting the information from others. So the problem is, again, we are very good at what you call dictating or commanding, but sometimes it happens that we are not good at listening. So a good communicator should have what you call even a good listening capacity also, and that listening should come through very patient way, in a what you call in a very cooler way, so that you can understand the things very clearly. For example, sometimes if a student asks questions inside the class, you don't have to get what you call fuzzy about it or get disturbed about it. So sometimes what happens, some teachers get disturbed when when the students ask questions. You don't have to get disturbed, because the student wants to communicate to you that he is not understood few of the concept which you have explained. So that's why he may be asking questions. So you can listen to him very carefully and you can clarify his doubt. And again, a request, sometimes we don't know the answer, because we don't expect that Pandit in what you call in depth. So sometimes we don't get what you call proper answer on the same day. So we might ask the student, yes, it's a very good question, but you'll have a answer tomorrow. So this is how what you call you can get as well as give information, so that you're having a teacher student friendly interaction, friendly in the sense I'm telling with some limits, where the atmosphere will be very cordial in the class if you have a clarity in your communication. Then the entire communication process, when we think what exactly happens. So suppose you are teaching, or what you call you are giving a message to some other person, you will become a sender, and you use channel, it could be air or media, and which is received by another person, and in turn receiver will give his feedback, that and that time he will become a sender and you will be a receiver. So you need a message, you need a media to transform the message, and you there should be a communicator and there should be a receiver. And what happens is this is the what you call a cycle, communication cycle or the process. But see down sometimes there is a noise effect. So when we talk about the noise effect, please understand. I give the simple example of the mobile, where sometimes you're not able to hear the other person. Why? Because the article there could be interference by the noise. So the same thing can happen in a regular day-to-day communication process also. So that's the idea in the entire communication process. But remember, when you talk about the communication process, it will be a two-way interaction, where you are trying to send article the message and want the other person to receive it, and correspondingly what you call answer back or getting a feedback. That's the idea. So you send and receive the messages through a structured way. And sometimes there will be a one-way communication. What is that? That one-way communication. So in one-way communication, you are trying to send a message or you are trying to send a lot of information. Again, I want to go back to the mobile and example. Sometimes you keep on shouting hello, 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 and other person is hearing, but you are not able to hear him, and because of the what you call technology or whatever it may be, or because it's what you call because of the tower issues or connectivity issues, so you are not able to hear, but other person can hear you. Then it will become a one-way communication. So that also can happen. So we have to manage all these things. But communication process is very important, because when a sender becomes a teacher and a receiver becomes a student, so now you go back to your class and imagine what kind of message you are transmitting. In turn, what kind of feedback you are getting is also more important. Then, when you talk about the effective communication, whether it's in inside the class or outside the class, these are the 7 C's of effective communications. Now, what are those 7 C's? Starting with the completeness. Now, remember, unless you complete the communication, we call it as ineffective communication. Why? Because what happens? Because there should be a good beginning, there should be this one, there should be a good, what you call, a proper ending. But in a hurry, if we what you call complete some of the issues without what you call actually giving proper information, or it could be incomplete information, then your communication is not effective. That means what? Even inside the class, if you are going, if you are teaching for 1 hour, I don't think it's possible 1 hour, at least 50 minutes. So you have to be prepared for 50 minutes precise. That is more important, because if you prepare extra also, you are not able to finish because of the time constraint. So the completeness of material which you want to communicate with the others is very important. I'm not talking about the syllabus completion. Sometimes teachers proudly say, I have completed the syllabus, but I'm not going to talk about that syllabus. Have you really completed the content part of it, or you have just finished the syllabus? That is more important. Then comes the conciseness, where when you talk about the conciseness, how they would this one, how what you call brevity, like you must have seen what you call. the more way, the precisely you say the brevity, in such cases it will be catching the student very fast rather than make it more ambiguous. So make it very concise so that you will be saving your time. That's more important, as well as you are effectively communicating. That regards to the conciseness part of it. Then comes consideration, whom we are addressing to. That is also more important, not only inside the classroom, even outside the classroom. I think you are very careful in these things, because when we consider the communication while addressing on the higher authority, our communication usually goes on a lower tone. When we address our subordinates or our students, definitely our consideration would be very different. So we should have that consideration, whom we are communicating, whom we are addressing to. Otherwise, if there is a mismatch there, you cannot communicate in a harsh way to your superiors. You know the repercussions. You cannot be very smooth way of communicating with your students. You know the repercussions. So you have to be very careful whom, what you call, we are considering. That is more important. The next part is the clarity part of it. Now, when it comes to the clarity, the idea is how simple way you are going to disseminate the lecture or explain the things to others. So, when it comes to clarity, the idea is you need to know the in-depth of the content part which you are going to speak about it. So once you know the in-depth part of content you are going to speak about it, then the clarity of your lecture would be very high. So sometimes what happens, students are not able to, what you call, understand. It happens sometimes. Why? Because the clarity is less. So now the idea here is, let us not think about teaching at our level. Let's get into the student level, try to understand their intellectuality level, and what level they understand. I think we have to get down to that level, make that clarity, and make it very simple, so that you'll be an effective communicator. Then comes concreteness. How strong is your material which you are disseminating, or how strong is your content? Is it very weak? Or sometimes what happens, the NEP syllabus comes, and what happens, they have put a, what you call, topics where you may not have much grip over it. So that time the concreteness of the, what you call, material will be less, then it's difficult to communicate. So that means what, you have to prepare much in advance, and you have to really provide very good material, so that it will strengthen the understanding of the student. That's most important. Then the courtesy part of it, again I go back to the consideration courtesy, almost on a similar line, whom we are referring to, what courtesy we have to follow. And the last part is correctness. This is where I'm requesting the other side teachers. Nowadays we cannot beat around the bush. Why? Because the things are available online. So, and some students are good enough to study well in advance, and they come to class. Now remember, when they're good enough and they come to class with the preparedness, we cannot beat around the bush. So whatever the content we are explaining in the class should have proper way of explaining, and it has got lot of, what you call, correctness in the material. Otherwise, we'll be caught in no time. So this correctness is not only inside the class, even in at outside class also, the correctness part is important, so that the more correctness you have in your material, I think you are very clear about what you are disseminating, what you are talking about. So all these, what you call, things like completeness, conciseness, consideration, clarity, concreteness, courtesy, and correctness constitute, what you call, 7 C's of effective communication. I know sometimes what happens is, because of the semester issue, because of, what you call, limited number of hours, and in between you have, what you call, lot of other jobs assigned by the management or by the college. It could be regarding the NAC or regarding other preparations. Definitely, we are, what you call, time bound, and sometimes we don't get enough time. But within the limited time, I think you have to do a lot so that you can be very good an effective communicator. So that's the idea of the 7 C's of effective communication. Now in nutshell, what is a communication? We said it's a series of experience of several sense organs. So it could be hearing, smell, seeing, taste, and touch. Will not what you call spend much time on that. So directly we get into what you call types of communications. So the first and foremost which we are using is the verbal communication. I'll explain about it. Second thing is non-verbal communication, where usually we talk about body language, where how we express our gestures and postures to make other person to understand what is there in our mind. Quite interesting one, non-verbal communication. Then there's a written communication where the communication goes by a write-up, which will be again we'll have some time on that. Then there is a touch communication, and lastly there is a chemical communication. So mostly we use in our classroom verbal and non-verbal communication. A written, touch, and chemical communication might be less. Now coming to the verbal communication, remember when you talk about the verbal communication, it is nothing but we are communicating with the other group of people or other the individual using a language where we use now right now I'm communicating through you people through a verbal communication where I'm using English as a language, and you are listening to me. Later you are going to question me few things, then it is a purely verbal communication where it's a basically it is that communication aspect comes through a language, and we try to exchange the words which are there in the language and trying to understand each other, what I want to tell you and what you want to tell me, or what I wanted to tell you, whether you understood or not, and what you have questioned whether you understood or not. So all this amounts to verbal communication. But remember, there should be what you call a language, and that is more important. We use a language in any language. It could be Kannada, it could be South Indian languages, or it could be North Indian languages. Any language if we use to make other person to communicate. So when there is a language component involved, then it becomes a verbal communication. The next comes a non-verbal communication. I say it's a big world of communication because there's an estimation of by people in the communication research. They say that 85% of our total communication is non-verbal in our in nature. So that means what? More than 85% of our communication is non-verbal. That means without our knowledge, we use these gestures and postures. Now remember, when you talk about these gestures and postures, anthropologists have identified more than 30,000 gestures and postures. And with or without our knowledge, every day we use several thousands of gestures. That's the beauty of it. And many times we don't speak, but just a gesture can make other person understand. So for example, we say a simple smile is a universal gesture. A smile, I'm talking about a simple smile, not other types of smiles. A simple smile indicates that affection or liking. So that's the idea in a simple smile. So that's why you smile. Sometimes you may not smile at, may not talk at your, sorry, you may not talk to your what you call colleague, but you may just smile and pass. That is enough to what you call uh, give the other person idea that okay, you have greeted him with the happiness. Now this is where the what you call you have not said that good morning or something, but as just a smile gave enough clue that okay, you have communicated properly and the greetings has been what you call exchanged. On other way you also smile. So now the smile exchange was there. It's a simple gesture, but it's a very powerful gesture. Likewise, suppose inside when you go to a class and students are themselves talking, a serious look at them without any talking make them stop talking. I think you have experienced this. That means what? You have not scolded them, but a serious look or a stare made them to what you call stop talking. That means what? You have communicated that you don't like this kind of behavior, and now students have understood our teacher doesn't like this kind of behavior on a simple level. Okay, this one non-verbal, and this works a lot everywhere, non-verbal communication. Then there's a written communication. Today what you are doing, what you call emails. Earlier you used to write letters, or any communication comes from your principal's office or a director's office, so which through a letter or email or any form of writing, then it has become a written communication. Nowadays it's become less because it's all now on a digital level. Then there's a touch communication. Be careful. Touch communication is a not a good idea in your institute, especially with the opposite sex. It can bring what you call a lot of negative issues for you. But touch communication can what you call work wonders at home. So be careful, because there are several anecdotes or incidents that were happened where with or without knowledge by what you call touch part of it, teachers may have penalized or victimized. So you have to be very careful regarding the touch communication, especially when it goes to the what you call when it refers to the opposite sex, because they might consider it as harassment. But the same touch communication can do wonders at your home. uh, I don't have much time to explain about it, because you must have understood a simple touch for with your son or daughter or with your spouse can have a lot of positive impact rather than negative impact. A simple touch. Likewise, the last form of communication is not we see much, called as chemical communication, where of late the what you call the scientists or researchers are finding whether human beings have got a chemical communication, because long back uh, there was a person called as uh, Paracelsus, who what you call who was a famous astronomer those days. So he hypothesized that the planets have got influence on our body, because our body contains a specific type of fluid which has influence from what you call the planets. And that's why they say during full moon day, or this one during Amasya or full moon day, some people behave in a very different way, and they attribute this to what you call influence of the what you call the planets on our body. But still research is going on, I cannot tell much. But this chemical communication you can see very clearly in the animal world. Your own pet dog, for example, can have what you call a lot of influence through this chemical communication, where uh, nowadays they find especially pet dogs or this one, they go mostly by chemical communication. uh, in the police department, if you see what you call there are sniffer dogs, and it's purely on the chemical communication side, where they can even track the drugs or even track the culprit, or the what you call even the victim tracing also can be done through chemical communication by what you call so-called expert dogs or sniffer dogs. It can be the ants, where communication you can find what you call through pheromones. They make a trail and they move. So there are a lot of things where you can find in what you call in chemical communication, but not much in human beings. Today our talk will be more on what you call verbal and non-verbal communication. So as I said, non-verbal communication constitutes what you call more than 85% of our what you call communication, and 5 to 7 or 5 to 8% will be only verbal, and the tone and pitch which we give another 5 to 8% contributes. So totally, if there is one, non-verbal communication takes a major share in our day-to-day communication. So since it is having a more, remember when you talk about the non-verbal communication, what are the important issues which have to be followed even inside the class? That is more important. So starting with what you call, you start with what you call first itself is ways of talking. How do we talk? The giving pause, stress on word has lot of impact even inside the class, because sometimes what happens, we use what you call modulation of voice. So suddenly we stop. That means what? You are given a pause. Now that means what? That is something interesting which indirectly you have said. So suddenly if you what you call give a pause inside your class, while giving a lecture that attracts them a lot. That means there is something important. Or sometimes you go by high pitch. That means what? That content is very important. Then what is the posture you are following? That is also more important, because that has a lot of impact, communicates to the student what kind of posture you are following. So I'll have some tips for you, what kind of posture you have inside the class before that. And if you are all big what you call, I don't know how many of you are what you call just freshers. If you are freshers, I think I would request you to practice in front of the mirror, so that you can watch your own posture, and you can see whether it is that kind of posture is appropriate for what you call that kind of situation. So even the posture also matters as a non-verbal communication inside the class. Then appearance, that is also more important, because we say teacher is a role model. So how do you appear also more important. When you talk about the appearance, it is basically, I'm not talking about the beauty or handsomeness here. I'm talking about how do you present yourself for others. Now it could be through your what you call uh, outward dress, it could be your behavior. So appearance could be what you call very important, which can communicate a lot for others. Then the head movements. Now this is where students keep watching you, what kind of movements you are doing, because a head movement gives the idea that approval, but what kind of approval you're nodding or negating, that is also more important. Then you say hand movements. Hand movements also very important, because you cannot be what you call sticking onto the podium, because this podium is required only for the beginners, because afterwards I think you have to leave the podium and speak. That's more important. Then the eye movements also important, because if you don't move the eye or eyeballs movement, if they are not there, the tiredness would begin, and this tiredness might bring a kind of laziness in us. So the eyeball movement is like giving an exercise to the eyes, so that also can be done. Then facial expression also important, because while teaching, all people are watching you, all your pupils or students are watching what kind of expression you are doing, because whatever you explain should match with your body language. If there's a discrepancy with the what the words and your body actions, then students get confused. So that's the idea. The facial expression and what you speak about it is also important. Then remember body contact, where I'm talking about touch communication to be important, but shaking hand also gives a lot of what you call meaning to the other person, or even a simple namaste or good morning will have what you call a lot of issues. Then closeness is which we are going to talk about, invading someone's space, which many people don't like. We'll be talking more about that closeness. Then how you are making sounds, what kind of things you do inside the class, outside the class matters a lot. Being observed by others, your body language. So be careful about it. So all these things constitute what you call non-verbal communication, which you do without any talk. Moving further, teaching as a process of communication. Now, this is where I want to highlight more on what you call teaching as a process of communication, where who is going to teach? It could be teacher, maybe teaching, textbook, writer, TV, presenter, radio, broadcast, anything which what you call a teaching can come through. Now, what we are going to do that? We are trying to explain or make the content simple of the lesson or the books which have been prescribed, because our idea is to make the job simple, because it's a process of communication using a textbook or using a content. Now we have to make the things simple. And how we are going to do that? By face-to-face speech. That's what the present day. Or it could be using what you call all the audiovisual aids. And during what you call Corona, remember we had a very different picture called as online talk or online lectures. And I don't know how many of you are from Karnataka or South India. The Corona part is increasing, so we may have to resort back to online teaching too. So we don't know yet, and until the government decides. So, but anyway, that part is online teaching or online classes found to be not much effective as the regular offline classes, because there is no face-to-face speech. So you must have already what you call understood this concept. However, your online classes compared to offline classes. Then comes to whom we are referring. That is also more important. That is to the learners or pupils or the students. That is more important because teaching is to be done. And how we are going to manage it to get a reaction as well as feedback. So again, I'm asking, whenever a semester begins, in the beginning classes, you have to ask the students regarding the feedback of the class. It's not vote of thanks, it's the feedback of the class, because especially in the beginning stages of the what you call classes, where the tuning should come, your what you call your teaching speed and the what you call understanding speed of the students. That's where the tuning should come. That means what? You should definitely ask students, what is that asking? First thing is, did you understand? And if you're not understood, what was the content part was not understood? And do you want to increase the speed or reduce the speed of my talk? That's also more important. So the moment, because if you're talking what you call, you want to finish the syllabus because there is a less time, so you're really hurrying it up to finish. But if the students are not understanding, then that communication is a waste one. So you have to ask this, what speed they want to what you call communicate with you. That's one thing where you're going to get feedback. What is expected, that is also important. What they didn't like, that is also important, because many times what happens inside the class is, we without our knowledge, we express some of the body languages which are not expected inside the class. On a simple level, telling so many times so, okay, you know like like these are the words repetition. So don't repeat a single like so again after some time. So now what happens? Now student might think that what is wrong with our teacher. So the idea here is the reaction as well as the feedback are very important in teaching. The more feedback you get, don't feel bad if if the student says that we are not able to understand your class. You should not feel bad. The idea is you should understand there is some weakness in you, that you have not reached the students to make their proper understanding. So you have to politely ask which part and how they want to get you. That is more important rather than just getting angry over it. No, please don't do that. So if they give a feedback, even if it's a negative feedback, take it positively, because once you take that feedback, negative feedback, and correct yourself, I think automatically your communication will be improved and you will become an effective communicator. So that's the idea as a teaching as a process of communication. Now when you talk about the education part, remember, things are so important. One is in the teaching, you have the content as well as communication. So the content can be used through method and instruction. Communication can be done through media and communication or instruction. So that is more important, how the content will be communicated. That is more important. Sometimes what happens, there is no projected media, then there could be a projected media too. So you can use, today we have in a digital age, we can use either software approach or we can use either a hardware approach. So when you talk about the software approach, you can use what you call more of technological advancement, like using LCD or 3D this one. And nowadays there's another thing which has come called as artificial intelligence. I don't expect you to what you call encourage your students to use artificial intelligence much. Why? Because I know how all of you know about the chat GPT. Anybody is not having a knowledge about the chat GPT today? Because that is spoiling our students, because just type one something, some content, and chat GPT gives you pages together material. Now by this we are killing the creativity of our students. So chat GPT, as a teacher, I would not advise my students to follow it, because it is not having what you call article. It gives a ready-made text. I think already you know about it. So it is better to use make a student to read books, whether it's e-books or this one hardbound books, and read them and filter the content rather than using the chat gpt, because it has got a lot of influence, and it makes our job easier. But what is the use when the student is not able to have a creativity in his writing? So that's the idea. Anyway, those who are copying these slides need not copy, because this ppt will be shared later with the what you call with all the participants. Then remember, now it comes to the what you call classroom communication, how it works. You are a teacher, okay? So what you do, you formulate, encode and transmit, because before to transmit a message, you should know a lot of things. You should know how to encode, because you cannot filter the book as it is, or the textbook, or the content part as it is. You have to formulate how to do it. You have to encode the information so that you can explain in a better way, and you have to transmit through a what you call, you have to have a lot of message or a content part. So how you do that? Through a medium like sign, symbols, etc., or using an lcd or digital technology, which in turn what you call the learner or your student would listen. That is more important. Later, once he listens, or once he or she listens, now he starts whatever you have transmitted, he tries to transmit. Whatever you wanted to encode, he tries to decode, and he tries to interpret in his own way. When he's not able to interpret, or he finds it difficult in decoding what you have said, it will lead to another message through a medium which will be given you back, so that you can make the things very clear. So this is in a very simple way the classroom communication can be explained. So a sender to a receiver, where how that what you call entire content part will be reached, and when the student is not able to decode whatever the information you have given, then he might ask a question back, or he might seek more clarity. So then it comes back to you. So that is a typical classroom communication interactive process. Now the coming back to what you call the body language part, which I was telling about it, being what you call how we have to follow a lot of what you call communication issues, both inside the class as well as outside the class. So this is basically to start with the distance maintenance, or maintenance of what you call proximity, or avoiding what you call invasion from others. So there are basically, anthropologists have identified 4 zones where we can what you call manage things better. So this is basically like maintaining the distance, or maintaining what you call a proximity, or this one, because we imaginarily carry an air bubble around us, and we don't like anybody coming very near to us. So that amounts to invasion of privacy. So what is that, the zones which can explain the invasion of privacy? So as I said, anthropologists have identified 4 zones, starting with the intimate zone, personal zone, social zone, and the public zone. So when you talk about the intimate zone, it can work out only at your home. So and this works out only at home or with very close friends, where the what you call communication goes by touching, and at the most the distance can lead to 6 inches to 18 inches, or 1 to 1.5 foot. So that's the where minimum distance, where this distance can be tolerated only between the family members, the spouses, and the children. This where you can try. So this is called as intimate zone. Then comes a personal zone, where you're the close friends or a family party, where the distance goes from 1.5 to 2.5 feet on a very closer level. On a far level, it is 2.5 to 4.5 feet. This usually you can find if you're celebrating some birthday parties and all, where you're called very nearby people, or you are near and dear ones. And this kind of distance will be maintained on a personal zone. But on a social level, remember, on a social level, where it could be a classroom situation, or it could be a situation where you're gone for a marriage or something like that, where it's a big gathering, and the distance will increase. The closeness can now increase to 4 to 7 feet, and the farther distance can be range from 7 to 12 foots. So that's the idea. And then last comes the public zone, where a political or a religious leader is speaking and the distance is far off, the pandal is somewhere else, the stage is somewhere else, and we are somewhere else. So the closeness could be minimum of 12 to 25 feet, you must have seen, as well as far off distance could be more than 25 feet, or sometimes it could be 50 meters. So depending upon the gathering. But remember, public gathering is something what you call very large distance maintenance. But if you're looking at this one, intimate zone, personal zone, social zone, and the public zone, remember, more the distance, lesser the closeness. The more you keep a distance with the other person, as we said, intimate zone, personal zone, or social zone, or public zone, in other way, it clearly gives the idea of that how much distance you are kept. It also shows how much close you are to the other person. That is also more important. So remember, but in English there is a what you call standard rule. What is that standard rule? Maintain your distance. It's a golden rule. Why it is important? Yes, there are a lot of anecdotes are there, because nowadays, because of the invasion of digital technology and Android technology, people are so serious about watching the mobiles, even in bus stands or in other places or even while walking. They are not aware of what is happening around us. There could be there could be chain snatching incidents. There were, because the person was not aware of what is happening around him or her, that led the what you call culprit to what you call snatch the chain, or you may be under threat. Why? Because you may be victim if you are not aware of yourself. So the self awareness being having how much distance you are keeping. I've seen many students or others all the time busy on mobiles, not even knowing that what happens outside or next to them. This is not a good idea, because if they lose track of that what is happening around us, then there is a problem. So there are a lot of implications about maintaining territories and zones, and please maintain your what you call the territory or zones, because once the person invades your privacy, you have no escape, because the person may be what you call taken over you. So when you talk about that invasion of privacy, remember, if you know much before, there could be fight or flight reaction which will be missing after the person is invading. So but if you are preparing much in advance, there could be fight or flight responses depending upon your strength. So the idea is maintain your distance even with the students or with your colleagues. That's more important, or with your subordinates. Maintain your distance, but this distance should be least at your home place or with your family. So that's the idea. Then when somebody invades our personal space, what happens? We feel troubled. So it is a very common feature when somebody invades, or when someone what you call invades my privacy, or he comes very near to me, I feel troubled, because there's something wrong, and I might get defensive, and I might become aggressive too. That is also important. And because of this, I might retaliate. So why that retaliation comes? Because I think there is a threat. So the idea is here is, okay, don't try to invade what you call other space, as at the same time don't try to get somebody to invade your space, because this has lot of influence. Again, going back to what you call your own classroom situation, we cannot be too close with their students, because a day might come that a student may be what you call putting his hand on his shoulders like as a friend, which is not at all expected. So that's why I said maintain your distance. So the moment you maintain your distance, everything will be fine. Then the next aspect is what you call, we talk about the masks. Now there are different types of masks. I'm not talking about the uh, talking about the corona mask or corona pandemic mask. No, I'm talking about the personality mask. So the idea here is do what you call, we wear a lot of masks. Our mask will be different at home, different at college, or our education institution, and with the others. So why this is required? To manage the show better. So the important thing is, when you talk about the public mask, sometimes we don't want to smile, but still we smile. Why? Because that's a mask we are trying to wear. You don't want to what you call smile at your principal because yesterday you got scolded, but that doesn't mean that you should not smile, but forcibly you smile. Now it's you are wearing a mask. Like clothing is a kind of masking. Then putting on my face, like something I don't like, but I feel I express as I like because of the other part. Then the mask we wear even on the extended territory. So when you talk about the extended territory, idea is that it could be on the road or at the work. Definitely we wear mask. But my question is now, can we drop mask? That means what? When you talk about these marks, we change our personality from situation to situation, and a frequent change of personality from situation to situation is not a good idea, because then we don't have much of reality, and we might lose a touch with the reality. We might be in a different world, which is not in a good way when it comes to the psychological level. So that's why the question is there, can we drop the masks? So this question definitely will be bringing out at our discussion part. So please note down this question, can we drop our masks? And if we drop our masks, what happens? If we don't drop our masks, what happens in a communication platform? So please, what you call, we'll go further, but if we talk discussing now, we'll be having less amount of time. So that's why I'm keeping this point at the end. Then few things are important in our communication skills. It will be their student or it will be the others. Remember, when you say what you call openness and honesty based on the palm gestures. See the first picture. If you see this picture, it clearly says that the student or the person is honest enough, and this is seen even in the what you call law of court, where the judge keenly observes the witness. We usually say open palms indicate honesty. But if the same person, if he puts the hand inside his pocket, that gives the idea that person is trying to hide something. So be careful about it, because people who know the body language of the details or the secrets of body language, they might what you call uh, cheat others by using this what you call body language technique. But usually, if a student, when during an inquiry, if a student says using this posture, I don't know, it really means that he doesn't know. But if the student, if he puts the hands in his pocket, pant pockets, or hides the palm behind and says, I don't know, that means he knows about it. So openness also can be seen easily with the palm gestures. And there are so many other palm gestures are there. For example, uh, you have seen what you call different kinds of pointers. Now remember, take out the fourth picture where a person is using a pointer, not the other one, a pointer of the fourth picture. Remember, try to avoid this gesture, whether inside the class or even outside the class, because we call it as an irritating gesture, especially pointing out towards a person, because it irritates a person, because it thinks that you're shooting that person with that what you call pointing, and this can irritate any person. So that's why many times what you call the conflicts or the fights have happened not because of the words, but because of the pointers. They might say, put your hand down, put your hand down. They say, why? Because they get irritated by the hand or the what you call pointer of the finger, not by your talk. So this is where you have to be very careful. And these are the different gestures showing, and this is a okay signal and whatever it may be. But palm gestures are many. Then you have got submissive palm position. This is where you do when you greet the higher authorities, where your hand goes down, or when it's a request posture. Please understand, a submissive position is a request posture, or even while shaking hands, your hand goes down and you try to receive the control of the other person. Whereas a dominant palm position, where when you are on upper side, when you are a boss and you want to greet others, then it becomes a dominant palm position, that you don't want to take a submissive palm position. Plus, another thing is important is this dominant palm position indicates some kind of firmness and a power. So you can make out your principal or someone, if somebody sometimes he greets, he'll not go by submissive palm position, he'll go by dominant palm position. You behave accordingly. That's the idea. So palm gestures are many. You can go think about this. Then even in shaking hands, there are a lot of communications would be there. If you see there, what you call the first type, with the suppose you are the person on the right side. Remember, the other person giving a dominant handshake. I'm moving the what you call cursor here. You are taking the control. This is called as a submissive handshake. Whereas here, it's a kind of what you call dominant handshake where you give the control and other person takes it. Then there's a shake hand proper because there is no tilting of what you call hands. Now it's pakka parallel to each other. If you see the what you call the third picture, now this is where you say perfect handshake. Then the last one you have to be careful, the glove handshake. My dear teachers there, please remember, when a person gives a handshake like this, and if he is a stranger, if a stranger gives you, underline, if a stranger gives you such handshakes, remember, that means don't believe him. A stranger, if he gives a glove handshake, the glove handshake is like your hand is taken by the other person in by both his hands and making as a cricket glove. Now this means what? The person who is giving you a glove handshake is expecting something from you. That is the idea. He is expecting something from you. But don't get confused with your friends or the near and dear ones. If your what you call near and dear ones gives this handshake, that gives the idea that they are very close to you, and it shows what you call more affection and love towards you. So that's why it is a glow handshake with the what you call with the close and dear ones. Don't get confused. But if a stranger gives such handshakes, remember, that is something is expected from the other person who is giving a glow handshake. Then how do you stand? How do you jockey? That's more important. Okay. In a group, okay, whether are you inclusive or non-inclusive. Now it is more important whether you include someone or exclude others in a group conversation. I'm not going to talk about the classroom situation, because in classroom situation you have to include each and everyone. Then what kind of positioning you do to include or exclude? Now parallel body positions. Okay, now when it uses parallel body positions, will position you oneself to relate to each other. That means what? Now you in position in such a way that you are seeing each and everyone, and your body angle is what you call equally maintained towards all. So this is the what you call positioning myself to relate each other. So that means what? I am doing a parallel body positions. Sometimes what? Side by side or neutral. Sometimes we stand side by side. It could be what you call in the bus stand and with unknown people, or it could be in an elevator. Yes, definitely. Or which is very unknown place. We don't know each other. We don't do any parallel positioning. We just stand side by side as if we don't know each other. That gives that neutral opinion. That means we don't know each other. And this can come when you are angry also. That's a different thing. Then when there is a face-to-face body positions, that means you are involved in a communication. And remember, whenever there's a face-to-face communication, eye-to-eye contact is also important. I'll tell you few of the tips how to understand what you call what is what you call facials, and what you call whether you know whether student is involved in our conversation. Because the moment is there is a eye-to-eye contact we maintain, not all the time. That's also not the good idea in a communication, because if you maintain a continuous eye-to-eye contact, it amounts to threat or harassment can happen. So be careful about that. We should have a break eye contact inside the class. We may not be watching only one student or a group of students all the time. It should be break eye contact, and we are observing all the students what you call on a equal basis. So that's where we face the people with the eye to eye contact, and can happen even with our students. Then congruence and incongruence, that what you call, we try to imitate each other. The group which imitates same as us other group, we say congruent. If the group which is not following us, it's called as incongruent group. That depends upon the situation, but ultimately we call it as a jockeying for position. Then how do we look? Just we talked about it. Please understand, how do we look? Remember, whether it's inside the class or outside the class, suppose we start staring continuously, it is a kind of dehumanizing or challenging the other person, which we do. If a student or if two students are speaking, we really stare at them. Indirectly, we are challenging them. What is your problem? Can you get rid of it? Or can you stop discussing? So this is the idea where we stare or stare, and this cannot happen everywhere. You must have seen sometimes fights happen just because of stare. They say, why you are staring at me? This has happened in bus stand or railway stations and all, just because of the stare. So because the staring part to yours from your side to others dehumanizes or challenges the other person. Then comes glancing. Now this is socially acceptable timing. A glancing, this which is what you call important in a social situation, including the classroom, we say socially acceptable timing. You glance for a few seconds and get back to this one, again glance back. So it's called as a glancing. Then appraisal, raising the what you call eyebrows up. It shows that you're what you call indicate showing some interest in the talk. That is more important. But my question is, whenever you look at other person, do you look when you talk? That is more important. When you talk, if you don't look, that means your interest is somewhere else. That means the communication is not good. But opposite, when you look also, do you look or just passively listen? This is also more important. So more important is, do you look when you talk, inside the class or outside the class? Likewise, do you listen as well as do you look at the person? So both, do you look when you listen? Do you look when you talk? Both are important, because if you don't look when you are listening, if you don't look when you are not listening, that means it shows the other person gives the idea that I am not interested in his or her talk. That's something very disturbing for the other person. It has happened. Other person keeps on speaking. We don't even look at that person. The person loses interest in communication, might drop the communication and go. Later, you may have repercussions. Likewise, when we talk also, we should look and talk, not looking at the wall or the fans or the switchboards. Please look and talk. Walking is also important. You may not have understood. We think that students are not watching us. Remember, each and every student, what you call, watches us, not only inside the class, even outside the class. And sometimes they imitate us, and whether you observed it or not. If your walking style is different, after you go, they imitate your walk. This has happened in several colleges, several institutions. How do you walk also is more important. Walking into a meeting with the long strides and straight posture. See the posture here. Walking with the long strides and all. Now, this indicates that the person has a long-term goal, visionary, and the person would like to take risks. So, as a teacher, what you call, never put your head down. See here, the chin up, the position, and the walking. See the what you call torso, no bending. And you can see these things are mostly in NCC and allied forces. But people who are in what you call high positions, they go for this kind of walk. A long straight and a straight posture, which indicates that they are visionaries and they want to take risk, and it shows high self-confidence. Can you practice this? Where it gives a lot of positive attitude for others, like how our teacher walks. Then inside the class, okay, how are you going to speak? We say open torso. That's why I said the so-called podium should be there only for your beginning classes when you start your career. But afterwards, podiums are not required. You should come out of the podium and speak. Now, we say when you speak, you have to use maximum body language. That means what? Keep the center of your body open all the times. That means never fold your hands. keeping your hands and arms uncrossed. The moment you keep your hands and arms crossed, it gives the idea that the person is psychologically reserved. Now that kind of psychological reservation should not be there with the teacher. He should be openly speak, use his hand gestures to explain. That's what a good teacher does, because what you call the only the verbal language which you are going to speak, just sticking on to the a podium will not give much of ideas to the student. But the moment you come out of the podium, start moving front and left, back and forth, subtly or slowly. Now it alerts them, and all your body language which you are using through your hand or torso gives better understanding for the student. So never keep your hands and arms crossed, because that gives a different idea for the student, and it shows less confidence too. So that's the idea. Then you can see the decision maker, okay, where the audience always looks at most important person amongst them as reinforcement. Now if you see this kind of posture, putting fingertips together, that gives the idea that the decision making is coming. It could be their students, it could be their principal. So look for these gestures. Then the arm gestures, if you have seen, now if you see, there are I've shown three types of arm gestures. The first one is the superiority confidence gesture, second one is the hand gripping wrist gesture, and third one is the upper arm grip. So the first one, if you see the superiority confidence gesture, when your principal comes for rounds, he'll or she'll do this. When you are on a in charge, or when you go for a classroom invigilation, definitely you do this kind of gesture, because you have a power in that classroom. Whereas these, the second and third gestures are not a good gestures, because they shows what you call a negative, what you call attitude towards what you call the situation, and this is much more negative. We say the hand gripping wrist posture, where the person has gripped the wrist here, the upper arm grip, you see the hand has gone up. These two are not a kind of good gestures, whereas this is called as royal gesture or superiority confidence gesture. Then the arm gestures, all these gestures you have seen repeatedly. It could be what you call inside the class or even outside the class. Remember this one, where if you see the fist are down and they're like the hands are completely what you call closed and fingers are intertwined, this shows a hostile attitude towards a situation. You can see the what you call the fingers completely closed and grip. Whereas see here, a person holding both the hands towards the shoulders, left to right and right to left, where he doesn't want to budge. Whatever he wants to say should happen. We can see more with the children, this kind of things, with the elders too, where the person wants to take a firm stand here, doesn't want to change. Now here, the person shows the superiority here, the third picture, where the attitude towards what you call this one, that he is trying to show that I am dominating the show. So can happen. So this is also where what you call a superiority attitude is shown. And inside the class, you can see a lot of evaluation gestures from the students. See now, where you can see the how the fingers are there. Okay, the thumb and the other fingers. These are all evaluation gestures from the students, whether what you call the teacher is doing right or not. Because what happens, see here, the second picture, it shows evaluation and decision cluster, because the person's thumb is what you call just down the lip and is trying to this one, and other fingers are just near the what you call cheek. Now this gives the idea of that the student is trying to evaluate your lecture, whether the person is telling right or wrong. Then see here, there is a evaluation, decision, and a boredom cluster. Now see the why boredom. If you see here, the down, the thumb is down, gone the beyond the this one cheek. Now because the idea is it is showing the boredom that is happening inside the class, and sometimes the students completely put the hand on their cheek, either left or right. Now full hand is taken over the what you call their cheeks, which clearly shows that the student is no more interested in your class. Or sometimes we call it as a drumming behavior. What is the drumming behavior is, they just what you call drum the desk. They just put the fingers in a dancing mode so that the fingers keep on moving like a drums. Now that shows that student is getting restless with your class. Or sometimes there could be a leg shake, indirectly telling that the students wants to get up and go. All these are indicative gestures to tell you that you may have to change the style of teaching. If they are giving a communication, or you have to change the topic, or you have to give them a break. So all this will have a lot of implications in your classroom teaching. And how to identify that a student is lying. Now usually, again, don't get confused. Okay, don't get confused with the this one. You require a lot of training for this. A mild nose touch. Now remember, we say even when what you call get nose irritation, also we get what you call we touch the nose. That doesn't to be misinterpreted for a lie. A mild touch along with the false cough or along with the fake smile, which indicates that a student is lying. The eye rub, sometimes unnecessarily eye rub, not because of the itching part, unnecessary eye rub. So that's why don't jump into conclusion. You require a lot of training in body language to come to a decision, because all these gestures will not come in a single one. They come in a group of gestures. It is not only just eye rub. Eye rub comes with along with the other gestures, so that you should be able to identify. And as a teacher, you should be able to understand the emotions of your student. That's how they are going to communicate with you. It could be depression, it could be anxiety or stress. Depression basically comes for the frustration part of it. Why, what do you call, they're not able to get what they want, or they are frustrated with the things, we are not able to achieve things. So that might lead to depression. Then the anxiety, where the apprehension of threat, what happens next, where we say it is apprehension. So apprehension could be examination anxiety, could be anything, or your IA exams anxiety, anything where what happens next, anxiety part of it. Then comes the stress, overloading the person, where it's a reaction given by mind and body, where the person is not able to manage well, which ends up in stress. You should be able to identify how the students are communicating to you and try to guide them so that you will become a good teacher.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So this is break time.
Okay, what time will get back to madam?
11:45, sir.
Okay, we'll get back. But I think all of participants there, I think we have to go a little fast in the next session, because so many things have to be discussed. Okay, be ready for it. So 11:45, we'll rejoin again. Thank you, madam. I forgot.
Thank
Sorry.
you, sir. Thank
Yeah.
you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.